Today we're going to talk about a company you've probably never heard of, but one that is absolutely essential to our future. It's called Quanta Services, and they are, quite literally, building the power grid for the age of AI. Let's get into it.
You know, we all talk about AI, the amazing models, the incredible processing power. But there's this fundamental question that we just kind of gloss over. Where is all the electricity to run this revolution actually going to come from? It's a massive, and I mean massive, energy problem.
And that's where we hit a wall. See, the system we rely on, America's electric grid, it's old. On average, it's over 40 years old. It just wasn't designed for the insane demands of giant data centers, millions of electric cars, and a full-blown renewable energy transition.
So this really sets the stage for what many experts are calling the coming power crunch. It's a situation where this exploding demand for electricity is slamming right up against an aging, creaking infrastructure. It makes you wonder, right? When a company like Amazon or Meta builds a new data center that needs the same amount of power as a small city, who do they call? Who is physically out there stringing the wires and connecting these power-hungry monsters to the grid?
Well, the answer is a very specific type of company, America's grid contractor. They are the true unsung heroes of this whole energy transition.
And the biggest, the most important one of them all, is Quanta Services. Now here's what you have to understand. Quanta doesn't make the transformers or the high-voltage cables. Think of them as the master builders. They're the elite engineering and construction crews that utilities and tech giants hire to design, install, repair, and modernize the grid itself. And this chart just perfectly illustrates how focused they are. I mean, look at this breakdown. A full 2/3 of their business comes directly from electric power work. Then you add in another 19% from building out renewable energy projects, and well, you see that this is a company that is almost completely dedicated to the power grid. And this brings us to the core theme here, a phrase that Quanta's own CEO loves to use to describe this moment in time, the Great Electrification. Quanta CEO, Duke Austin, he put it really simply. He said, "We are at the center of a multi-decade transformation. This isn't just a 2-year trend. They see themselves at the absolute heart of the biggest energy build-out this country has seen in more than 70 years. And this transformation isn't just one thing. It's being pushed forward by 4 huge, powerful forces, all hitting at the exact same time. First, just the basic need to upgrade our old grid. Second, that explosive demand from AI data centers we talked about. Third, all the government money from the Inflation Reduction Act pouring into renewables. And finally, the big push to bring manufacturing back to the US, which needs a ton of new power hookups."
Okay, let's just focus on one of those for a second to really get the scale of this. The demand for power from just data centers is expected to triple by 2030. That's a mind-boggling growth rate, and every single one of those new facilities needs a specialized, heavy-duty connection to the grid.
So how can we be sure that Quanta is actually the one capturing all this new work? Well, that brings us to the most powerful piece of evidence in their entire story, something we can call the $44 billion promise.
$44 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. It's probably the single most important indicator of where Quanta is headed.
So what is it? It's their backlog. Now, a backlog isn't a wish or a forecast. It's the total dollar value of signed contracts for work they have been hired to do but haven't finished yet. The easiest way to think about it is like a prepaid construction queue that's already stretching out for a year and a half. And that queue, it's growing at an incredible rate. I mean, just look at the trend here. It goes from $34.5 million to over $39 billion to a record $44 billion in just over a year. This is what you call accelerating demand, right here in the numbers.
To put that number into perspective, check this out. Last year, the company made about $28.5 billion in revenue. They already have $44 billion of work signed and waiting in line. That is more than a year and a half of their all-time high revenue already locked in.
Okay, so the demand is obviously there, the contracts are signed. What does the road ahead really look like for Quanta?
Of course, it's not all a perfectly straight line up. There are a couple of key risks to watch. First, everyone knows this is a great story, so the stock price is pretty high. That means investors expect them to execute perfectly. And second, the kind of work they do requires really skilled people, linemen, engineers, and there's a major shortage of them, which could become a bottleneck.
But the company itself seems incredibly confident. At a recent event for investors, they laid out some seriously ambitious goals for 2030. They're targeting revenue of $44 to $49 billion. But here's the kicker. They expect to grow their profits by 15 to 20%
every single year until the end of the decade. That's powerful, consistent growth.
So when you boil it all down, it comes to this. The total size of this energy build-out is estimated to be around $2.4 trillion, and Quanta Services has managed to place itself right in the middle of it all. The demand is surging, the contracts are signed, which really leaves just one big question. Will this quiet contractor from Texas end up being the defining industrial company of the AI decade?